Hello, I'm Peggy Maddox. Maybe you remember me from last year when you came out to the 69 Ranch as third graders. We are so sorry we can't be with you this year out here on the land. But since you can't come to us, we want to come to you because we can't stand not being able to connect with you. Now, we at Kids on the Land have a mission, a job. We want you to learn about the place where you live. Now, why do we think that's so important? We want you to connect to the land in your environment so you will want to take care of it. And to take care of it, you have to know it. And to know it and be willing to take care of it, you have to love it. Now, when you came out to the 69 last year, as third graders, we were doing the work of an entomologist. If you remember, you released ladybugs, you learned how beneficial they are. You participated in the insect lab where you used the various tools of an entomologist to collect insects and determine the diversity of the insects here at the ranch. We also learned about the insect's life cycle, and Susan Pollen from Dallas brought her honeybees. Well, this year, we want you to continue to learn about the place where you live. So I've invited Jana Hall to come and help us learn about the native plants, their uses, and their history. Those plants we're going to see on the nature trail, which is right down here. So let's get started. Oh, yeah. Wait, Mom has a story she wants to tell us first.
Hello. Remember, you all were out here last year as third graders? Well, you know, it's changed a little, and we're doing a video about two special critters that are out here to tell you a story. It's about T90, the little field mouse, and RC raccoon. RC stands for rascally raccoon. Well, one morning early, T90 jumps out of bed in her, it's in her little nest, and she puts on her soft blue pants, and she puts on her cowboy boots, her red t-shirt, and her kind of slicky yellow jacket because it's cool outside. And she grabs her red backpack and she goes into the kitchen and she fixes a tiny grilled cheese sandwich. In fact, she fixes two. One to eat now and one to eat later for lunch. And she puts she eats the first one and it tastes so good. It was warm and kind of golden tasting, you know how cheese is. And then she puts the second one, she wraps it up in wax paper. And she puts the second one in wax paper she puts into her backpack. Then she has a little thermos full of water, and she decides she better drink some water. So she drinks it off a leaf, and she grabs a blueberry. She eats the blueberry, and she scampers off to meet her friend RC. And she's put some nuts in her backpack for eating later too, and she put some in there for RC. RC told her if she would come and meet on the north porch of the adobe house at the 69 Ranch, they could go on an adventure. So she's coming to the north porch, and there he is waiting for her, and he just smiles from ear to ear, and he says, "Hey, get your mask and put it on, because you know we've got this COVID-19, although I don't have to put on a mask because I already have one. I am the mascot for the COVID-19 because of my mask and because I wash my hands all the time." And to get ready for this adventure, he said, we got to do some breathing exercises, and we're going to have something called our tools. I hope you have your tools with you. It's really important to breathe in the morning, so put your little paw up and breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And kind of shake your little shoulders and shake your tail. I'll shake my tail too. And we'll get all loose. And did you bring your tools? She said, I'm not sure what tools are. He said, well, they're the 5 senses. You know, as you look around, what's your favorite color? And she thinks, oh, I think my favorite color is yellow, like the soft sun. He said, and when you think of something you love to taste, what is it that you love to taste? He said, you know, RC likes to talk. I love to taste, he said, red, juicy watermelon. And after I eat it, I really have to wash my hands. She said, maybe I like sunflower seeds. He said, you know, make your ears big and listen to the sound. Did you know that trees and rocks and grasses and flowers, they all can talk. They may not use words, but in a rock you might hear the ocean and the tree might hum to you. And she said, oh, I like to listen to water. And he said, okay, we've done hearing and we've done seeing and we've done tasting and feeling. He said, how do you feel right now with the temperature on your skin? She says, I feel a little cool. I said, well, those are our tools, and we're going off to have an adventure. He said, the first thing we're going to do is look at some red and yellow cans that have sunflower seeds in them. Mom keeps them in there. And me and my whole family, we like to get in there and dump them over. My brothers and my sisters and my mother and my daddy and me, and sometimes we get into them and we try to eat all the seeds, and Mom does not like that one bit. He said, and you know, the reason I really asked you out here today, particularly, is that I heard Ms. Maddox talking to Mom, saying that we were going to have a video for the 4th grade students because they couldn't come out here this year because of COVID-19. But we're going to have 2 human beings come, and they're going to do a nature trail, and we can follow them, and we can have so much fun. But I wanted those 4th graders to know us. We said, okay, let's walk to the other edge of the porch, and there are flowers there. And she said, oh my, look at all the colors. There's reds, and there's yellows, and there's blues, and there's butterflies, monarch butterflies all over those blue flowers. And there's hummingbirds all over those red flowers. And he says, I know a big word. I heard it from Miss Maddox. It's called migration. And then he puffs up a little more because he thinks he's being so smart. And he said, migration, that means that they're flying south. And the hummingbirds, some of them go all the way to Honduras. Do you know where that is? She said, no. He said, I don't either, but it sounds like a big word. So then let's go around the corner to my favorite tree because it's got 2 bird feeders in it. And my family hangs out there underneath the tree in the summer. And we go up and down the tree. And sometimes we hang from the branches, and sometimes we hang over so we can reach the bird feeder, and we try to knock them down so we can get all the food. But then sometimes we just have to hang upside down on the bird feeders. And Susie Squirrel sometimes does that too, and Mom just laughs at us. Oh, he said, guess what? I hear the adults. I hear those human adults, and they're coming to take the nature trail. Well, let's get ready and follow them, and we can go down to the park, and we can wash our hands in the creek, and we can listen to the sound, and we can eat a little lunch under the cottonwood trees. You know, if you get real quiet, and the wind's blowing just right. Those cottonwood trees sound like rain.
Thanks for that story, Mom. My name is Jana Hall, and I'm going to be your guide on the nature trail. And we'll keep an eye out for RC and T90. The first plant we're going to talk about, as Miss Peggy said, is a lot of the plants that have provided for the wildlife and the people and early settlers in this area. And the first one we're going to talk about is one that pretty much everyone should know because it grows all over West Texas, and that's the mesquite tree. The mesquite tree has very dainty leaf, big thorns, and bark that we all like to use. It's a good for wildlife as far as protective with the thorns. Wildlife likes to eat the seed pods, particularly turkey and quail. And then the bark, it's attractive to coyotes, skunks, sheep, and deer will eat the foliage and twigs. As far as people, we like the mesquite tree as well. The bark, as I mentioned, is very fragrant, and when we're cooking or grilling our barbecue, we like to put that in there. Gives a nice flavor and scent. Mesquite wood is a very beautiful wood as well as it's aged. People like to carve with it, everything from rolling pins to hardwood floors. Actually, in my house, that's what my floors are, hardwood mesquite. Inside of the mesquite tree, its sap can actually be boiled down, and it makes a sticky paste, almost like glue, that Native Americans would use to fletchling feathers onto their arrows. The main thing are the seed pods. And the seed pods of a mesquite tree, Native Americans would grind them up into a flour, and then adding water to it, they would roll it out to make a type of flatbread, or what we today would call a tortilla. The seed pod can also be used for making jelly, which is very tasty, a nice sweet treat. So that's the mesquite tree, and now we're going to move on to our second plant. And that is this shrub, more of a shrub I would call it than a tree, and it's called Algerita. Again, this is an important food source for turkey, and it makes a great loafing area for quail. The Algerita is also known as agrito or even agarita. It has little red berries that are very tart. That's an important food source for turkey as well as people. After a long winter of no fresh fruit or no green vegetables, it really gave a great dose of vitamin C when we got to the springtime in May. The base of the Algerita, which we can't see too good, it's a little bit thorny. It has beautiful yellow wood, which again is great for carving due to that color. You can also boil the wood to make a tea to help with a stomach ailment. Algerita is usually found under another large tree due to seed dispersion. Most birds that will eat the berries would go up to another tree, have their berry, digest it, and down it goes, back into the ground. So that's when you'll usually find these under another large tree. So moving on, this particular large tree by this Algerita is a Texas black walnut. And the husk of the black walnut is usually a large husk that's green, that as it matures over time becomes black, and it has a large nut that is hard and really is valued for cooking. Past here, we're looking at some Indian grass. You've got a couple of different clumps of it here and here, really here. And as you can see, it's good for eating. Turkeys like it. And in particular, because it's tall, it's a good ground cover for both turkey and quail. All right, now we're going to move further down into the park area now, and we're going to talk about a couple other trees. But first up, the tree we're going to look at is this tree here to my right, and this is called a hackberry tree. It has very small berries that again are a good source of vitamin C. At the time that you have them. They're a wildlife attractor, meaning those things like quail or turkey, small mammals are attracted to those. And if there's a grove of hackberries, it really makes for ease of hunting in the wintertime because those animals will gather. People also could utilize the berries. They would boil them down into a paste and then roll it out onto a stone, and they would make fruit leather once it was dried. And they could put this in stew, or again, just eat it direct after it had dried for a source of vitamin C when the fresh wasn't readily available. So what I like to think of that is that the hackberry gave us the very first fruit roll-up. Over here to this side is what we call a soapberry tree. And a soapberry tree kind of gives it away what its use is when you hear it in its name, soap. And these are its berries. Obviously, they're a bit larger than the hackberry or even the Algerita. And what you would do is you would put these berries in, they're not edible, you'd put them into hot water and then it would suds up, and you could use that to clean yourself or your clothes down in the creek. And the chemical in the soapberry is called saponin, and it would stun the fish if there were fish in the creek. So some Native American tribes, like the Comanche, would eat fish so they could go down, take their bath, get their dinner, and be ready to go for the night. And so looking around here, you can see the rock walls that line the park. And our early settlers would use these rock walls to keep in their herd. They were sheep herders, or known as pastores, and they would use the rock fences to keep in their herd at night or during a storm. The rock walls you see here were built by Senator Temple Dickson in the 1980s and 1990s, and really is a way for him to just relax and honor the former pastores. And they're seen throughout the property. As we move down through the park, we're going to move down to the actual Sweetwater Creek. This is a headstream of Sweetwater, the headwaters of Sweetwater Creek, which a town nearby is named after. What would that be? Sweetwater, exactly right. And within the water is both watercress and mint. The watercress here is kind of like arugula, kind of something you might find in a salad. Again, a great source of vitamin C. The mint we'll look at around the corner here in a moment. The building you can see up in the corner is the spring house, and that's really where the water comes up from. And before there was what we know as a refrigerator, this is how you would store your perishable goods. You'd put your milk in there in bottles, or cheese or fruits, and this is how things were kept cold before this area got electricity in the 1930s. Now this big giant tree here next to me, right on the edge of the water, which is so big I can't even get my arms all the way around it, probably over 100 years old, is a cottonwood tree. And cottonwood trees are beneficial because they're so tall, people can spot them from way far away. And the benefit of that was they grow near water. And so if you found a cottonwood tree, you generally would know water is nearby, and even if you had to dig it up, it was there. Cottonwood has very soft wood, which is good in winter that horses or cattle can eat. Additionally, as a softwood, it's used for carving. Native Americans would call dolls or other things to tell stories. We're going to cross the bridge now and continue a little bit deeper into the park. And as we go, I mentioned the mint. This is mint. It's growing here naturally. And what the mint would do, the purpose of mint in water, is if the water is rather salty or jippy, has a lot of gypsum, it might not taste so good. And so the mint would help the water taste a little bit better so you could drink the source that's near you. We're going to cross over. And we're going to move up the hill toward the rock walls to some prickly pear cactus. So this is prickly pear cactus. It's one of the more common cactus that probably you've seen before if you're out and about. And it has a fruit and other parts of it that are edible. The fruit of the prickly pear is called a tuna. It's this red thing that's right up here. And that fruit can be boiled or juiced to put in to make a juice, or even just eaten direct as the fruit. It's called a tuna. The pad of the prickly pear, the green part, a lot of times can be made into bags or pouches. As far as eating it, you can cut it up and soak it in brine and make what we call napolitos. And those are things that people eat and drink today. You can also make prickly pear jelly, and it's another one of the great jellies. Now, the pads that are over here to this side that have the white on it, you might wonder, well, what is that? What's going on with that one? Well, these you might think have fungus or mold, but in actuality, that's a home for an insect. And the insect, it's a tiny little insect called a cochineal. And you may have learned about this last year. And a cochineal is a little bug that lives off the prickly pear. So if you actually remove some of this from the prickly pear, which I'll do, and then you squash it in your hand, it makes a beautiful red color here on my fingers, if you can see it there. I'll do a little bit more. So you can see that red coloring. Some of y'all probably got to rub some on your face last year. You can also see the color it gives in different dyes. And up until when the Spaniards came and discovered the cochineal here in our part of the world, they really had not had this kind of a dye before that was red like this. So it's very unique, and the Spaniards took it back and really made tons of money selling it to other Europeans, the church, until the English stole it from the Spanish, and then of course they dyed their red coats, and that is of course who, as Americans, we fought for our independence. And a shipload of cochineal was actually more valuable than a shipload of gold, just because this was a dye that was so unique in color as well as it was long lasting. It wouldn't wash out. So there's a couple of interesting things about our prickly pear cactus. Now, as you can see out to the right, this continues the Sweetwater Creek, as we saw earlier, and we crossed over the bridge. It continues to run down this way. So here to the right, which look like just a lot of reeds, but what they actually are cattails. And the cattails are very edible, all the way from the root up to the pollen. And so as you can see kind of out there, we have a more close example here. The root of the cattail, if dug up and cooked, tastes like a potato, where the pollen, which is this white, very fluffy stuff here, tastes like a pancake, and both are edible. And for how much we have out here, we could probably feed a rather large group for a week or more, I would think. Now this part here is what I actually think of as the actual cattail, this more reedy looking part, and it's very soft and fluffy, and that was used, the Native Americans used that to stuff in diapers, and during World War II we actually used that to stuff as having insulation or lining in our jackets. The reed of the cattail, the green part of the cattail, is great for weaving, weaving mats to sit on, or a covering for when it's raining, and that's a good, it's a stiff reed that's good for weaving and keeping structure. Over here to the right, here where the pink ribbon is, this is called a juniper. right here. And it makes little berries that you can boil and put in tea or stew. And everyone might be thinking of juniper, but the more common name that we call it by is cedar. And I'm for sure for those of y'all like me know when it's in bloom, because I tend to sneeze a lot when cedar is blooming. So cedar has a few. It's also good for wildlife. They eat the berries. But a main thing with the juniper, the cedar, is with the invention of barbed wire. And the post, the actual wood of a juniper, grows very straight. So with the invention of barbed wire, needing to build fences, which of course you don't want your fence falling down, if you strip all of that away, you've got a nice straight fence post. And as you drive around, or as you may notice if you're out in rural areas, you can still see a lot of these cedar post barbed wire fences still around today. So we're going to continue down into the last of the park, heading toward our grove of pecans. Before we stop and talk about the grove of pecans and that, we're going to look at what's here, the willow. And there are some others as we near the end of our trail, but this one is here. This is a willow tree. It's got very slender leaves. And as nearly every culture knew about willow, is if you boil its bark, it will make a tea that will cure your headache. And so everyone knew that. That was the use of the willow tree. But Dr. Pear in the 1880s, who was a German, actually took what was in that tea and sort of synthesized it into what today we call aspirin. And so if you ever heard of Pear aspirin, he actually got it from this particular plant. So moving on, you can see the grove of pecans back behind me. Pecans are a native plant, and most of these were planted by the Dickson family. Here are some pecan nuts, which the pecan itself, the nut, was valued not only as a food source for animals and people, but Native Americans also used it to trade. So it was kind of an early coin, so to speak. And mule loads of these pecans went from our area all the way to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Over here we have kind of you can see that the creek is continuing on our trail, and we've got this particular plant, which is kind of has a flower, kind of it tears up, but it's got a beautiful green, kind of very soft leaf, and this is called Hor Hound. And Hor Hound is a natural remedy for sore throats and coughs. And even today, they still make Hor Hound candy. So it's great that we have other medications now, but it's really cool to know that you can still get natural things and they still exist and are made today. So that's Hor Hound. As we come around the curve here, you can see this tall white plant, and it's called Snow on the Mountain. And it actually is not really edible. If a cow were to eat this, it would give them a tummy ache. So we've talked about several plants that help cure that, but this one actually will give that. Deer will actually eat it, but only if there's really nothing else available. They'd probably rather have the bark of that mesquite than the snow on the mountain. So as we continue walking here, you can see more of the horehound, some more of our Indian grass, another mesquite tree here, and of course the grove of pecans, where a lot of time on a day at the Dickson Ranch you can find turkey feathers. Currently we see a few hog prints, I think. So again here we see another willow tree again that we talked about that can relieve headache. This very soft silver plant here is called holy sage, and there's some more. There's even a bigger clump of it up here mixed in with some other things. but it is very fragrant, and it was really used by the Native Americans in more of their religious practice for ceremonies during prayer or after a war or warfare, maybe even in a sweat lodge. And they would burn that for its aroma. One reason this area, as we've been through our walk, was so attractive was for the Native Americans was really because of several elements. One was obviously the water. Two, as you can see in the rock, the giant boulders back there, they had shelter. Beyond that is a grove of wild plum trees. And we've talked about the different berries on the hackberry or the Algerita. Plums, of course, you can make jelly out of or eat them just wild. So this particular area was great for early settlers or Native Americans and wildlife, mainly for water and food source. And for us today, it's just a beautiful place to be. I hope you've enjoyed our walk on the nature trail today. I hope you have learned something that you didn't know before and can go home and share with your family. And I think I see that RC and T90. I'm going to go catch up with them.
Kids on the land, kids on the land, kids and nature go hand in hand. Gather your friends, come along with me. Get to know your nature neighbors naturally. There's animals and insects and plants galore. There's fossils and history of what's happened before. This world is a spinning and it's only beginning. Will there always be room for more? Sure! Kids on the land, kids on the land. Learn about this world starting right where you stand. The earth is alive, ain't it just grand? Let's keep it that way